My name is Eric Powell. I'm the Director of Business Development for Regenis, and I'll be sharing with you an overview of sequential treatment of dairy manure. The goal of this presentation is to share with you an overview of key separation and treatment technologies that we here at Regenis have installed and operated on dairy farms over the years. A lot of our experience is with dairy farms that have anaerobic digesters, so a lot of it will be post-digestion treatment, though some will be treatment on facilities that do not have a digester. So to start off, generally speaking, we believe in a sequential approach to manure treatment. Again, a lot of our experience is with anaerobic digestion or post-digestion treatment, though an anaerobic digester is not necessary for treating manure in an advanced way or any of these ways that are highlighted here. Most of our experience is with a primary solids separation step, advanced solids separation step, and then clean water generation. So in terms of primary separation, this is something that's happening on a lot of different farms. Won't spend a ton of time on it, but it's something that can be done with a screen or a screw press. And again, is very common with the goal of removing those bulk solids and keeping them out of a lagoon because you don't want to have to clean lagoons out. So again, very common. And after the primary solid separation step, some farms are choosing to do an advanced solid separation step. A lot of different techniques there. You can use a centrifuge, belt press, dissolved air flotation, or DAF. You can add polymer to get more solids removal. Most of our experience is with dissolved air flotation systems, which was what I'll be talking about more. But in that step, you're concentrating a lot of the phosphorus and nitrogen nutrients in those solids. The tea water that comes off the fine solid separation step can be further concentrated or treated. Most of our experience is taking that tea water and sending it through membranes to generate clean water and concentrate. Primary solid separation step, again, very common. Goal is to keep solids out of lagoons so that they do not have to be cleaned out and after being filled with solids, and they can be used for liquid storage for the farm. A cow generates about 10 yards of this per year. It's a dry-ish product that can be stacked. The thing that we like to highlight here, or I'd like to highlight with this presentation, is that while this is not a new technology and it is being widely used, a market for the product, which is these solids, has taken a lot of time to develop. A lot of people have spent a lot of time and energy into developing a market for these solids, and it is something that some have been able to capture some value for. But when we're talking about more advanced manure treatment steps further along down the line here, something to keep in mind is that markets for these products or byproducts is not something that is very easily put together, or value for these products is not always realized in a timely manner. So it does take time to build markets and make the products into something that can be used. So fine solid separation step, as you can see here from the picture A, it looks a little more advanced than it is. Each step in the sequence gets more and more costly. But with the fine solid separation step, we generate about 5 wet tons of solids per cow per year. They are stackable solids, but they do have more of a clay-like feel to them, and there's a presence of some polymer, because the way that we get these solids out of the manure is we take the effluent off the primary separator, goes to a buffer tank, and then is pumped to the dissolved air flotation unit, where it's mixed with air and polymer solution. So the polymer binds the solids together. They're bound together around those air bubbles that are being injected into the influent to the DAF. And once they go into the tank that you see there in picture A, the solids float and are skimmed off the top into a dewatering step where moisture is removed, and you get the stackable pile that you see in picture B. That picture B there is about a day of production for 1,800 cows. So as you can see, it adds up to a significant amount of solids that then have to have a home, but they are concentrated in nutrients. about 80% of the total phosphorus and 30% of the nitrogen ends up in that pile. And you can see from the graph there that it's been well documented that the nutrients stay mostly with those solids. So there's a lot of correlation to those solids and containing a lot of the nutrients. But it is added O&M cost and added complexity in order to get that nutrient concentration. Not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, but as you can see, there's some data here showing fibrous solids, fine solids, and tea water liquid and their makeup. That can be reviewed at a later time when this presentation becomes available, and you can see what each one of those products looks like. For a more visual representation of that, we've got this slide here, where the jar in the top left is raw manure. As you can see, though the picture is a little blurry, you can see that there's a lot of solids in there. That's manure coming, right into the pit at the farm. In this case, the second jar is effluent from a digester prior to separation. So with the colored bubbles, you'll see that there is some significant reduction in solids where those solids were used to make gas, but virtually no impact on the nutrients that's in the manure. So after digestion, there's primary separation, where we do again remove a significant amount of solids, and then we start to see some removal or concentration in the nutrients in the liquid after primary separation. But really the biggest jump is from the primary separation to the effluent of the fine solid separation, where again there's a significant reduction in solids, and this time it correlates to a much more significant reduction in nutrients, particularly phosphorus and nitrogen. And that concentration is now in those fine solids. So there it can be more easily or precisely applied, but they do need to be either applied to fields far away or need to be handled in some way, because they do contain a bulk of the nutrients. I'll also point out that if you look at the jars, the liquid being poured out of the jars, if you look at the one on the far left and compare it to the one on the far right, which is raw manure to tea water coming out of the dissolved air flotation unit, there's a significant reduction in viscosity, making that liquid considerably more easy to handle. Obviously, there's less solids in it, so solids buildup in the lagoon becomes less of a concern. So after fine solid separation, you can further treat the manure. What we have the most experience with, again, is membrane treatment to generate concentrated nutrients and clean water. Our experience with membrane treatment is actually on a farm that does not have a digester. What we see at that facility is that manure is sent to a screw press for primary separation, where the bulk of the solids are removed. There's a buffer tank that is used to continuously feed the fine solid separation system. In this case, it's a polymer flocculation system to remove the fine solids. I'll point out that there's lots of different fine solids removal approaches that could be put in this place, and a combination of fine solids removal approaches could be put here, such as centrifuge and DAF, just DAF, centrifuge with polymer. Just depending on what the waste stream is and what it looks like, you could use a variety of approaches there. But the big thing is you just got to remove all of the suspended solids prior to sending that liquid tea water to the membranes. With the membranes, you'll have a concentrated liquid containing a lot of the nutrients, or all the remaining nutrients, and a clean water that could be dischargeable or used on farm for cow drinking water, or has a variety of uses and benefits. Another more visual slide here where you see manure. In this case, it's post-primary separated liquid manure. And then the next jar, you see that same manure, but after polymer has been added to get the solids to flocculate. So you've got the flocculated solids on top, the tea water on the bottom. That tea water then is sent to the reverse osmosis membranes, where we get concentrate and clean water. So if you're looking at the percentage the percentages of where these different byproducts are, you've got 24% of the volume ends up in the solids, 33% in the concentrate, and 43% as clean water. If you look at it from a standpoint of after the fine solid separation, that's a 60-40 split between clean water and concentrate. If you look at the data down below here, you'll see some information on the concentrate and the clean water. I'll let you look at that on your own. I won't go through that, but what you'll find is that the clean water is very clean, in most cases dischargeable, and the concentrate does contain pretty well concentrated nutrients, particularly nitrogen, that can be more precisely applied and in a volume that's greatly reduced when it comes to something like having to truck it a long ways. Some of the economics of these systems are displayed in this slide here. Again, our steps are fiber separation, fine solid separation, and then clean water. In this case, we're assuming that a digester is in place ahead of this because that's what most of our experience is with. So you can see that for each step, there is capital and O&M costs. In each step, those capital and O&M costs are increasing. So it costs more and more to get the last little bit of concentration or nutrients out. Like most things in life, the first 90% is pretty easy and the last 10% can be very difficult. So as we treat things more intensively, but obviously the costs are going to go up. Some considerations when looking at manure concentration, manure treatment are what level of post-digestion or what level of treatment is necessary. How is somebody going to afford it? What are the technologies? How do you make it pencil? You know, each farm is different, so not all farms need to go all the way to clean water. That's why we believe in a sequential approach where you add what you need, and then if that need changes as you go on, you add an additional technology that's complementary and not, you know, totally start over. To be able to afford it, you know, milk prices are not super high right now, so the farmer has to think creatively on ways to be able to afford technologies like this. There's lots of different technology providers that provide technologies that do slightly different things and have benefits for different farms. So a farmer should look at all available technologies, you know, including ones that I'm not presenting on here, but others will, to see what's the best fit for them. Proforma's consideration needs to be, is the co-products going to have any value? If the co-products have value, is it something that is desirable by the market as it is, or does it need to be further treated to be desirable? You have to start thinking about things like offset costs, lower trucking, maybe just staying in business. So there's lots to consider when doing a pro forma, and it's not going to look like your traditional, for example, digester pro forma, or it's going to be a little bit hard to factor in. I'll point out also that there's a lot of emerging technologies when it comes to nutrient recovery, nutrient concentration, and it's definitely something to keep an eye on, as there are a lot of approaches that show promise and could be, you know, something that is a consideration in the future. So environmental pressure on dairies is going to continue and is likely to expand. So this is something that, you know, dairies need to be educated on, regardless of the approach. A lot of these different treatment processes are coming from the municipal sector and need to be augmented or adjusted and modified to be used at dairy. Dairy manure is different, and so the treatment of it is going to be a little bit different than what we see in the municipal sector. And it's going to be costly. Like I said before, the first 90% of anything in life is pretty easy, and it's the last 10% that really gets hard and costs money. So, you know, there needs to be some state, national assistance, perhaps, creative business plans, or maybe even integrate them with renewable energy projects where, you know, some revenues from one thing can offset some advanced treatment costs. That's all I have, and I look forward to answering any questions that come up. Thank you for having me.